Our goal here at Dr. Sellers Educate in this series is to ensure that you are studying the right content and not the wrong content to help you maximize the time that you have to study. Starting with the right resources, having the right support as you move forward, and making sure that you focus on the right content area can be the difference between you achieving success and not achieving success. Welcome back, everybody, to Dr. Sellers Educate, where our mission is simple and it is to support all nurse educators to achieve success on the CNE exam. We're going to be talking about the resource that you should use, which is Billings and Halstead. Right now, we're in the 6th edition. So if you're watching this snapshot live, then you will focus on using that version. Stay connected to us via our newsletter, and you can subscribe to our weekly newsletter at drsellerseducate.com. That's our website, and you will see a place for you to subscribe to our newsletter once you log on. And then the second tip I want to share is printing out that study worksheet. This study worksheet has 2 points that I want you to go ahead and capture right now, which is today's date, whatever date you're watching this snapshot. And then the second step is writing down, what is your objective? What is it that you want to accomplish at the end of our time together today? If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. That way you'll be notified as soon as a new snapshot is released, which usually happens every week. All right, so we talked about the resource. What else is it that we want to focus on today? In this snapshot, we're going to be talking about exam analysis. What is it that you should focus on when it comes to exam analysis to avoid wasting time so that you are hyper-focused on content that is going to help you achieve success? All right, first, we're going to take a look at our thought-provoking question, and then we're going to transition into content review. And then we will wrap up our time by looking at the correct option and the incorrect options so you understand exactly what the rationale is and you're able to take a deeper dive in the Billings and Halstead textbook that we'll reference as well. We're actually going to include 2 thought-provoking questions in our time together today and looking at exam analysis. So let's take a look at the first one. Your students performed poorly on a recent exam, prompting a review of necessary changes. In the context of exam reliability, which of the following scenarios best exemplify steps to enhance inter-rater reliability? A nursing exam is administered twice to the same group of students and the scores are compared. B, 2 faculty members independently score a set of student essays using a standardized rubric and compare their scores. C, the same exam is given to different cohorts of students at different times and the scores are analyzed for consistency. D, a faculty member administers an exam and later rescores the same exam to see if the scores are consistent. So taking a look at your 4 options, this is what I want you to think about. Okay, so 2 thoughts for every question on the CNE exam. Number 1, what is this question really asking me? And then second of all, what is it that I know for sure about content related to this question? If you're not sure what reliability is or inter-rater reliability, that's okay. That's why this is called a thought-provoking question. Before we close out our time together in this snapshot, we'll come back to this thought-provoking question. We'll go over the correct answer and the rationale as well as the incorrect answer. I'll go ahead and share that if you have Billings and Halstead in front of you, chapter 25 is going to be the chapter that will give you a deeper understanding of these basic terms that you'll need to know in order to be successful on the CNE exam as it relates to exam analysis questions. Okay, so now let's transition back to our content. Now that you've had a chance to write down the correct option for the thought-provoking question, we want to make sure that you have the resources in front of you that are going to help you stay focused as we move forward on your journey together and focusing on what content you want to study and what content you do not want to study as it relates to exam analysis. The next resource you're going to pull out is your study worksheet. This is going to allow you to write down key concepts that you're going to focus on after our time ends together today. You also want to take out a pen. Putting pen to paper increases your likelihood to retain the information at that 70% threshold. Some research even says that it's higher than that. Okay, so 70% more likely to retain information when you write it down and when there's a connection that you have to the content that we're describing. We want to make sure as you're going forward on your journey to achieve CNE success that you're using the right resources. So yes, it's about focusing on what content to study, but we also want to make sure you have the right resource, which for this snapshot, it will be Billings and Halstead, chapter 25. That is where you're going to find content about exam analysis. Now we're going to take a look at our Canva presentation where we're going to highlight some of these key elements that you want to focus on. Exam analysis. We want you to avoid this one big mistake to achieve success. The one big mistake is simply using other resources. So we have here, this is an older edition. When it comes to Monroe's statistical methods for healthcare research, you don't need this resource. Okay, so let's go ahead and dispel that myth right now. You don't need any other resources when it comes to reviewing content to help you close your knowledge gap for the CNE exam. What about this one? We've shown you this one before. This is the older edition as well. A systematic approach to assessment and evaluation of nursing programs. You don't need this resource either. Okay, so that's the one mistake you want to avoid that will prevent you from achieving success on the CNE exam. And that is buying all of these resources that you don't need. The only resource you need is Billings and Halstead, and you can supplement your review by looking at Dr. Caputi's CNE review book. We consider that our Cliff Notes version. Now let's take a look at the content that you want to focus on in order to close those final knowledge gaps as you get ready for the CNE exam. Exam analysis, that is the concept we are focusing on as we explore content and not that content. This is an opportunity for us to take a deeper dive in exploring exam analysis. I encourage you to use that strategy as well. Start with a thought-provoking question for your students, for your learners to consider, and then about midway through, you want to engage in a discussion related to that one question or that one provocative statement that's going to keep them plugged in. The first concept we want to look at is how do we maximize our success potential when it comes to exam analysis? What are those key effective study strategies for us as we're moving forward either towards nurse educator excellence or towards achieving success on the CNE exam? All right, so let's see how you do with this one. Statistical methods. I just happen to have my calculator right here. Statistical calculations. What do you think? Do you think you're going to need that for the CNE exam? Or do you think this is an opportunity that you can take on your journey to achieve nurse educator excellence? So write that down and let me know which one you choose. All right, so now hopefully you've had a chance to write down yes or no. And if you chose no, you do not want to study this content to help you achieve success on the CNE exam, you are correct. You do not need, nor will you be given a calculator. Okay, so you will not need this at the exam area. In fact, the proctor would remove it from you and not allow you to go into the testing center with a calculator. So what does this mean? If you get to an exam question and you feel like you need a calculator to determine the right answer, that's a red flag. That's an indicator that the question that is being asked of you is not related to a statistical calculation. It's related to a concept oftentimes of measurement. What are these key statistical definitions that you want to be knowledgeable about? Reliability, validity, mean, variability. You do want to have some knowledge of mean, median, and mode as well. However, there's not going to be any calculations that you're expected to make on the exam. If you have muddy points related to any of these variables, any of these concepts that are listed here, I encourage you to take a look at chapter 25 in Billings and Halstead to have a deeper understanding of the content. You can also use, if you have it, Dr. Caputi's CNE review book, the second edition. This is going to be included in chapter 3. What else is it that you want to know as it relates to this content? Focus. Focusing on what you don't know is going to help you move forward. Using the resources, only the resources that we have talked about, and that would be Billings and Halstead and Dr. Caputi, and not using those other resources that start to distract you. So you want to ignore those distractions that hold you back, knowing that success is a choice that you're making every day. So the number one tip to avoid failure is do not use other resources. And listen, we know it can be tempting. There are lots of practice question resources that are available. There's flashcards, there's all kind of resources. You do not need those. The only textbooks, the only resources we want you to use, in addition to Billings and Halstead and Caputi, are going to be our study workbook, because it's going to keep you focused as you move forward and aligning with a 7-week study plan. And the other resource is the NLN Blueprint, and you can find that in the NLN handbook based on the exam that you're taking. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, everybody knows the number one tip to avoid failure is not using other resources. Just this week, we were meeting with colleagues that are within 2 weeks of taking the CNE exam. The one colleague that voiced frustration was the one that was using other resources. In fact, she had spent money, I hope she can get her money back, on additional textbooks that she did not need. All of the other colleagues did not use any other resources. So kudos to those of you that are staying connected to only the resources we're recommending, because that is going to help you stay focused. All right, what about this one? Historical development of testing theories. Okay, we get this question a lot. So are you going to be tested on how to write NCLEX style questions? Okay, so that's what we mean about the historical development of testing theories. If you guessed no, you are correct. Give yourself a round of applause on this one. Is this important for you to be able to achieve as a nurse educator? Absolutely. We want to use those evidence-based practice as we develop our NCLEX style questions to better equip our students with the competence and the confidence when it comes to how to answer NCLEX style questions. So we know that with the new NCLEX format, that there was a change in the style of questions. Many of you are breathing a sigh of relief to know that you are not expected to know the science or the art behind writing NCLEX style questions, or even exam questions for that matter. All right, so next topic that we want to focus on, let's see how you do with this one. Exam or test blueprinting, being able to map content to exam questions. What do you think about this one? Do you think you're going to need to know how to use this skill, this strategy on this for the CNE exam? Let's see what you think. All right, so if you said yes, you are correct. If you are on the journey for CNE, you're absolutely going to have to be knowledgeable about exam blueprinting. Bloom's taxonomy, this is one of the reasons. Leveling, or making sure as we look at the exams that we're developing for our students, that we are aligning the different levels of Bloom's taxonomy. We don't want really easy questions at the bottom, that lowest level of remembering. We don't want a lot of questions at that highest level either, of creating, to be highly difficult. We want a spread. We want a variety of questions to spread across all of those different levels of Bloom's taxonomy, all 5 levels. And then the second element is alignment. We want to look at how these specific questions on our exam align with our learning objectives and align with the content that we have discussed in the class, the reading assignments that we've given our students, and the discussions that we're having with them as well. Now, if you're on the journey for CNE clinical, then exam blueprinting, obviously test blueprinting, you should not expect to see that on your exam, okay? But for the CNE novice, yes, you should prepare for questions related to exam blueprinting. It really helps us understand the why, the rationale, and really the validity of our exam questions, mapping back and aligning with the content that we are providing to our nursing students. So what's your number right now? We're going to go back to our thought-provoking question number 1, and then I'm going to introduce a second one and see what your thoughts are about this one. So I want you to write down, how are you feeling? 1, you feel lost, right? And very sad. You're not sure exactly what we have been discussing, but you're going to take some time to go back, look at Billings and Halstead, and have a deeper understanding. Or 5, you feel like you're ready to teach this content. You have grasped a very strong knowledge level as it relates to exam analysis, and you are confident in your ability to now take that next step and explore these concepts that we've talked about and really teach them, maybe even to your peers. We did hear from a colleague a couple of weeks ago that she was successful on the exam, and this is what she told us. She says, Dr. Sellers Educator is an excellent source for not only CNE study, but to inform the practice of nurse educators. Any instructor or course will be improved by having faculty skilled, knowledgeable, and given attitude developed from this educational content. So we appreciate feedback that we hear from our colleagues. This helps us really modify our curriculum and make changes to ensure that we are providing a support system, a consistent support system to help them not only be successful on the exam, but also helping all colleagues to achieve nurse educator excellence in the classroom. So now let's transition and see what you thought about our thought-provoking question. So the correct answer is B. 2 faculty members independently score a set of student essays using a standardized rubric and compare their scores. So if you didn't choose the correct option, that's okay. We're going to talk about some of the key elements to really help you hone in on some of these concepts related to exam analysis to help you improve your confidence and your competence. Okay, so let's talk about validity. So first of all, or reliability, I should say. So the question is really assessing your ability to understand inter-rater reliability. This scenario actually involves the comparison of scores given by different raters to the same set of responses. These are the steps to help improve inter-rater reliability. So number one, ensure that all raters are thoroughly trained. So we have to make sure that we are knowledgeable when it comes to how we write exam questions, as well as our alignment of the content to the actual exam question. Okay, so number two, making sure that we are calibrating, sitting down as colleagues and talking about the mapping of the content to the course. And then third of all, being clear about specific criteria that we are using in the rubric. Now, that's the great thing about this option B. It says it was a standardized rubric. That's an evidence-based practice. Having that standardization in place allows us to be more consistent, and also it lets students know exactly what the expectations are. Okay, so those are 3 points. Number one is to ensure that we're trained as faculty on how to write exams properly. Number two is looking at time, dedicating time to sit down and talk about the exam questions and alignment. And then number three is using specific criteria, measurable criteria, such as a standardized rubric, to make sure that we are consistent in how we're making decisions about how students are going to be scored based on the assessments that we have developed. So give yourself a round of applause if you chose B. All right, so let's take a look at our next thought-provoking question as a bonus. We're adding a second question for this snapshot. Okay, so here we go. Ensuring that your exam accurately measures what's intended to is crucial in evaluating student performance and guiding instructional improvements. Validity plays a key role in this process. Which type of validity is primarily concerned with ensuring that an exam measures all relevant aspects of the subject matter and excludes irrelevant information? So we have A, construct validity, B, content validity, C, criterion related validity, or D, face validity. So I want you to go ahead and write down what you think the best choice is and the rationale. And if you do have Billings and Halstead, you've already seen on page 476, this is where you're going to find the blueprint and information about the blueprint. There's a couple of examples of blueprints as well. And then there's some information about writing test items. Again, you're not going to be asked questions, or you shouldn't expect to be asked questions about NCLEX, how to write NCLEX questions, but you do want to have a general idea of some of the specific measures related to validity, such as how do we improve validity, okay? And we talked about one of them, even with inter-rater reliability competency. We have to be knowledgeable about the art and the science of how to write exam questions, but we're not going to be asked or tested on that content when it comes to the exam. All right, and then when it comes to Billings and Halstead, I'm just going to give you a couple of pages to take a look at related to validity. That's going to be on page 486. So this is where you're going to find the definition of these specific validity concepts so that you can take a deeper dive and have an even better understanding. All right, so if you chose content validity, you're correct. Give yourselves a round of applause. And let's talk a little bit about the rationale as to why this is the best answer. All right, so this is what we know. This question is really examining your deep understanding of the different types of validity. Okay, so when we talk about constructs, it's truly looking at the relationship between the concept and the learner's ability to validate and to confirm that they are knowledgeable about those concepts. Okay, and then criteria-related validity is more aligned with what we call an assessment of the competency levels. Okay, so criterion-related validity, as an example, is the framework that is used to validate competency-based education programs. So there's a criteria that is established and determined what is required for students to meet that level of competency. A good example is going to be the health assessment final skills checkoff. We have specific criteria that we're looking at, and we expect students to be able to demonstrate in order for us to say they are competent or to check them off on that skill. Okay, so that's an example. So 3 strategies to increase content validity when it comes to an exam. First of all is the blueprint. You guessed it, making sure that we've already mapped our content and our learning objectives, and we've leveled to the different questions on our exam. So that's number 1. And then number 2, looking at those questions on the exam to make sure that they are evaluating across the specific content area that we are expecting to validate students' knowledge about related to those questions on the exam. And then third of all, we want to seek feedback, of course, from content experts. So when we are developing an exam, yes, we are, for the faculty, from a faculty standpoint, we are seen as the content experts. However, we want to collaborate to make sure that we are indeed reading a question, developing a question, the way that we intend to develop that question. How many of us have been in a situation where when we have a colleague that reads the questions, or sometimes as a student, they see the question differently than the way we see it. Okay, so that's why when it comes to that inter-rater reliability, it's important that we take a proactive approach, and it is going to affect validity as well by having others, our peers, our other content experts, take a look at that question as well. All right, so that's content validity. And again, you're going to use page 486 in the 6th edition of Billings and Halstead to help you close knowledge gaps, clarify muddy points if you need further explanation. We hope this snapshot has been helpful as you think about what your priorities are going to be as you move forward on your 7-week journey, your 90-day journey, or maybe some of you are on a 6-month journey. Our mission is to support every nurse educator to achieve nurse educator excellence and to be successful on the CNE exam. We look forward to seeing you during our next snapshot.